the Sonic Paralyzer. In the autumn of 1944, inside the heavily secured Oranienburg testing grounds north of Berlin, SS engineers activated a weapon that left no wounds. The device resembled an audio cannon, mounted on wheels with a dish-shaped emitter nearly 2 meters in diameter. Unlike traditional weapons, this one emitted infrasound, low-frequency waves below the threshold of human hearing. Test subjects exposed to a 10-second burst collapsed without resistance, their muscles locked, their bodies frozen. Yet they remained fully conscious, aware of everything, unable to move, speak, or scream. In one documented case, a subject's heart rhythm became irregular for several minutes before normalizing, without any physical trauma. The project lead, SS physicist Dr. Hans Kammler, noted in classified reports that vocal resonance neutralization was achievable at frequencies between 7.5 and 9 Hz. These were not random experiments. The goal was clear: to incapacitate without killing, to control without contact. Reports from prisoners forced to clean the testing chambers described guards wearing strange black uniforms entering impact drills unharmed. One internal memo referenced protective frequency dampening, suits designed to shield the wearer from the weapon's effects. The device could reportedly paralyze human targets at distances exceeding 30 meters, silently, invisibly, without a single bullet fired. What makes this technology disturbing is not just its effect, but its invisibility. No flash, no sound, no evidence left behind. Upon Germany's defeat, the Oranienburg site was reduced to rubble by targeted Allied bombing. But, according to an OSS memo dated July 1945, a transport convoy carrying components of the sonic weapon was intercepted near Hamburg. Its contents, once cataloged, were classified and transferred to undisclosed U.S. facilities. The logs list the device simply as frequency modulation array, non-lethal prototype. The scientists who built it vanished into Operation Paperclip, absorbed into American weapons programs, their identities erased, their work continued in silence. In 1972, a leaked Rand Corporation memo briefly mentioned a theoretical weapon that could disable hostiles through neurological interference at subaudible levels. The project was never officially acknowledged. It disappeared from later reports as if it had never existed. Modern sonic weapons, such as those used for crowd control, rely on high-pitched sounds and do not approach the disabling effect described in 1944. No known system today can paralyze a target without contact, without pain, and without trace. The silence surrounding Project Schallbrook is telling. No blueprints have survived, no researchers spoke publicly, and the few references that exist seem to vanish as quickly as they appear, pulled from archives, redacted from databases, erased from memory. If the Nazis developed a weapon that could shut down the human nervous system using only vibration, it would represent one of the most terrifying intersections of physics and biology ever conceived. A machine that leaves no scars, no smoke, and no sound, yet incapacitates its victims in seconds, is not just a breakthrough. It is a threat to the very idea of resistance, a weapon against which there is no defense, because you cannot fight what you cannot perceive. Somewhere in classified vaults, the frequency equations may still exist, the calibration data, the resonance charts. If the nervous system can be switched off with sound, then what else has been developed in 80 years of silence? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, if such a weapon exists today, how would we ever know it had been used? The Sonic Paralyzer was not destroyed. It was inherited, and silence, as always, is the most effective weapon of all. What you cannot hear may already be listening. The earthquake machine. In 1898, inside his laboratory on Houston Street in New York City, Nikola Tesla attached a small mechanical device to an iron pillar. The device was no larger than an alarm clock. It operated on a simple principle: mechanical resonance. Within minutes, the vibrations began to spread. The pillar hummed, then the floor, then the walls of the building itself. Police were called after neighboring buildings reported tremors. Windows cracked. Furniture moved on its own. People fled into the streets in panic. Tesla, realizing the danger, grabbed a hammer and smashed the device just before, according to his own account, it could have brought down the entire block. He later told reporters that with the right frequency, he could split the Earth in two, like an apple. The principle was deceptively simple. Every structure has a natural frequency. Apply vibrations at that exact frequency, and the oscillations amplify, growing stronger with each pulse. This is how a trained voice can shatter a wine glass, how soldiers marching in step can collapse a bridge, how a tiny device could threaten a city. Tesla's oscillator was small enough to fit in a pocket, yet he claimed it could be tuned to resonate with buildings, bridges, even geological formations. In the 1930s and 40s, military patents began appearing for devices based on Tesla's resonance principles, designed not for construction, but for destruction. The Soviet Union showed particular interest. In 1935, they invited Tesla to develop his technology, an offer he declined. But others continued where Tesla stopped. By the 1970s, reports emerged of Soviet research into seismic weapons, devices capable of triggering earthquakes along fault lines. Declassified documents reference Project HARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, and its potential connections to ionospheric manipulation and tectonic resonance. In Alaska, 180 antennas stretch across 33 acres, capable of focusing 3.6 megawatts of energy into the upper atmosphere. Officially, the facility studies radio wave propagation. Unofficially, critics have linked its activation windows to unusual seismic events around the world. In 2010, after a catastrophic earthquake struck Haiti, rumors circulated that HARP had been testing directional pulses in the days before. No proof was ever released, just silence. The same silence that followed Tesla's death, and the disappearance of his most dangerous work. On January 7, 1943, Nikola Tesla was found dead in his room at the New Yorker hotel. He was 86 years old, alone, and surrounded by decades of unpublished research. Within hours before his body was even cold, FBI agents arrived. They seized everything: notebooks, blueprints, prototypes, correspondence, 80 trunks of material. The official report stated that nothing of significant value was found. No weapons, no revolutionary devices, just the ramblings of an aging eccentric. Yet the man who reviewed Tesla's papers was no ordinary agent. It was John G. Trump, an MIT physicist with top-secret clearance and uncle to a future president. Why would the government send a weapons specialist to evaluate the work of a man they publicly dismissed as irrelevant? The oscillator blueprints were never seen again. Neither were the detailed notes on resonance weapons, seismic amplification, or targeted structural destruction. But echoes of Tesla's work have surfaced in unexpected places. Black budget programs, classified patents, weapons systems that officially don't exist. In 2014, the military handed control of HARP to the University of Alaska. The official reason? The program had achieved its research goals. No further explanation was given. No results were published. The most powerful ionospheric heater ever built simply stopped mattering. If resonance can shatter glass, collapse bridges, and shake buildings to dust, what could it do to a fault line, to a city, to a nation? Tesla warned us. The Earth, he said, responds to vibration. The only question is who holds the tuning fork, the death ray. On his 78th birthday in 1934, Nikola Tesla made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the scientific establishment and military intelligence agencies worldwide. He claimed to have invented a weapon capable of bringing down fleets of aircraft at a distance of 400 kilometers, a particle beam that could end all wars. He called it Teleforce. The press called it the death ray. Tesla insisted it was not a ray at all, but a stream of accelerated particles traveling at immense velocity. The weapon required 4 components: a mechanism to produce tremendous electrical force, a method to build up enormous voltage, a process to amplify that voltage, and a new type of vacuum tube to project the particles. Unlike traditional weapons, Teleforce would leave no trace. No shell casings, no smoke trails, just instant destruction. A wall of death stretching hundreds of kilometers. Tesla approached the governments of the United States, Britain, the Soviet Union, and Yugoslavia. He offered to build them the ultimate defensive weapon, one that would make war obsolete. The responses were mixed. Public dismissal, private interest. The Soviet Union reportedly paid Tesla $25,000 for preliminary plans. The British War Office showed significant interest until Tesla demanded full funding and complete control. They withdrew. The Americans never officially responded. But privately, intelligence agencies monitored Tesla obsessively. His mail was intercepted, his phone was tapped, agents followed him through the streets of Manhattan. Tesla grew increasingly paranoid in his final years. He claimed foreign agents had broken into his hotel room, that his papers had been photographed, that pieces of his prototype had been stolen. Many dismissed him as delusional, an aging genius lost to madness. But after his death, the FBI's own files confirmed that multiple foreign powers had indeed attempted to acquire his work. The safe in Tesla's hotel room, the one containing his most sensitive research, was opened before the FBI arrived. By whom? No one knows. In the 1980s, the United States launched the Strategic Defense Initiative, nicknamed Star Wars. Its centerpiece, particle beam weapons capable of destroying missiles in flight. The technology was presented as revolutionary, a bold new frontier. No mention was made of Tesla. No credit given to the man who conceived it 50 years earlier. Today, directed energy weapons are no longer science fiction. Military lasers can shoot down drones. Microwave systems can disable electronics. Particle accelerators span kilometers. Yet, the full-scale Teleforce, a continental defense shield of concentrated particle beams, has never been publicly deployed. Or has it? Classified budgets contain line items for programs with no names. Facilities exist with no official purpose. Technologies are tested that are never announced. In 2006, a declassified Air Force document referenced directed energy weapons capable of neutralizing targets with pinpoint accuracy from orbital platforms. The document was quickly reclassified. Journalists who requested copies were denied. The subject became once again officially non-existent. Tesla believed his death ray would bring peace, that mutual destruction would make war unthinkable. He saw it as a shield, not a sword. But weapons rarely stay defensive. What protects one nation threatens another. What prevents war can also start one, if wielded by the wrong hands. The complete blueprints for Teleforce have never surfaced. Tesla claimed he kept the most critical details in his head alone, too dangerous to write down. When he died, those details died with him, or so the official story goes. But in 1984, a curious document emerged, a technical paper describing a particle beam weapon in terms remarkably similar to Tesla's 1934 proposal. The author, unknown. The paper circulated briefly in defense circles before vanishing. Those who saved copies found them confiscated. Libraries reported the document had never existed. If Tesla's death ray was truly impossible, why the continued secrecy? Why the surveillance? Why the theft? The answer, perhaps, is that it was never impossible at all, only forbidden. The mind control beam. In the summer of 1906, amateur radio operators across the world began picking up a strange new signal, a persistent rhythmic tapping that disrupted communications on multiple frequencies. The sound repeated at exactly 10 pulses per second. It cut through broadcasts, interfered with aviation, and could be heard from Australia to Alaska. They called it the Russian woodpecker. Western intelligence traced the signal to a location near the city of Chernobyl in Soviet Ukraine, a massive over-the-horizon radar installation codenamed Duga 3. The antenna stretched nearly 700 meters wide and stood 150 meters tall, one of the largest structures ever built by the Soviet Union. Its official purpose: early warning radar for incoming missiles. But critics questioned why a radar system needed to broadcast on frequencies that disrupted civilian communications worldwide, and why its pulse rate, 10 hertz, matched the alpha rhythm of the human brain. Alpha waves govern relaxation, suggestibility, and the threshold between waking and sleeping. Research had shown that external signals at this frequency could influence mood, cognition, and even behavior. In 1976, the U.S. Embassy in Moscow reported a troubling pattern. Staff members experienced headaches, fatigue, confusion, and a strange buzzing sensation, symptoms that had no clear medical explanation. The cause was eventually identified as microwave radiation, beamed directly at the embassy building. The Soviets denied any hostile intent, calling it routine security scanning. 2 U.S. ambassadors stationed there later died of cancer. Several staff members developed leukemia. The State Department quietly installed protective shielding and never spoke of it publicly. A classified 1982 NATO report referenced Soviet research into psychotronic weapons, devices designed to alter mental states through electromagnetic frequencies. The report warned that such technology could be used for mass influence, affecting populations without their knowledge, creating anxiety, depression, or compliance on a national scale. The United States was not innocent. Project Pandora, launched in the 1960s, studied the effects of microwave radiation on primates and, according to some accounts, on witting human subjects. MKUltra, the CIA's infamous mind control program, explored everything from drugs to hypnosis to electromagnetic influence. Many files were destroyed in 1973, but fragments remain. One surviving document described experiments to induce specific emotions: fear, calm, aggression, through precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses delivered to the temporal lobe. In 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster forced the evacuation of the entire region, including the Duga 3 facility. The Russian woodpecker fell silent almost immediately. Officially, the signal stopped because the facility lost power, but some researchers noted the timing was too convenient, as if the disaster provided perfect cover for shutting down a controversial program. The woodpecker signal never returned, at least not on the same frequency, but similar pulses have been detected in other parts of the world, emanating from unknown sources. In 2016 and again in 2017, American diplomats in Cuba reported symptoms identical to those experienced in Moscow 40 years earlier: headaches, hearing loss, cognitive impairment. The phenomenon was dubbed Havana Syndrome. Dozens of diplomats, intelligence officers, and their families were affected in Cuba, China, Russia, and even on American soil. Brain scans revealed something unprecedented: physical damage to white matter without any external trauma. Something had reached inside their skulls without touching them. The leading theory: directed microwave energy, the same technology explored decades earlier in Moscow, Pandora, and the shadow of the Russian woodpecker. In 2020, the National Academy of Sciences concluded that directed microwave radiation was the most plausible explanation. Yet no weapon was ever identified, no perpetrator named. The technology to affect the human mind through electromagnetic frequencies exists. It has existed for decades. The only question is who controls it, and who is being targeted. If thoughts can be disrupted, moods altered, and behavior influenced without a single physical contact, then free will itself becomes a variable, one that can be controlled. The Russian woodpecker may be silent, but the technology it pioneered has not disappeared. It has evolved, it has spread, and it remains officially non-existent. When silence can carry a command and thoughts can be shaped by invisible waves, who decides what you think? And would you even know the difference? The invisible bomb. On July 9th, 1962, the United States detonated a 1.4 megaton nuclear warhead 400 kilometers above the Pacific Ocean. The test was called Starfish Prime. The explosion was visible from Hawaii, 400 kilometers away, but what happened next was unexpected and would change the nature of warfare forever. Across Oahu, streetlights went dark. Burglar alarms triggered simultaneously. Telephones fell silent. Radio stations broadcast only static. The nuclear blast had generated an electromagnetic pulse, a wave of energy that fried electrical systems across hundreds of kilometers in a single instant. No one was injured by the blast itself. There was no fireball, no shockwave, no radiation on the ground, just silence. The sudden death of every electronic system within range. Scientists realized they had accidentally discovered a new kind of weapon, one that could cripple a nation without killing a single person directly. The implications were staggering. A single, high-altitude nuclear detonation could disable an entire continent's electrical infrastructure. Hospitals, water treatment, banking, communications, all gone in a flash no one would see. Within months, both superpowers began hardening their military systems against EMP. But civilian infrastructure remained, and remains to this day, almost entirely vulnerable. By the 1990s, research had advanced beyond nuclear-generated EMP. Scientists developed non-nuclear devices, E-bombs, capable of producing localized electromagnetic pulses through conventional explosives. These weapons could be delivered by cruise missile, drone, or even carried in a suitcase. No radiation, no mushroom cloud, just the instantaneous collapse of everything electronic within the blast radius. In 2003, during the invasion of Iraq, the U.S. military reportedly deployed E-bombs against Iraqi broadcast facilities, though the Pentagon has never officially confirmed their use. Leaked military documents describe a class of weapons called high-power microwave systems, HPM, capable of disabling vehicles, aircraft, and electronics at distances exceeding several kilometers. In 2019, the U.S. Air Force unveiled Thor, the Tactical High-Power Operational Responder, a truck-mounted microwave cannon designed to disable drone swarms. But Thor is only the public face of directed energy weapons. What exists in classified programs remains unknown, and deliberately so. Congressional reports have warned for decades that the United States remains dangerously unprepared for an EMP attack, whether from a hostile nation or a terrorist cell. A 2008 commission estimated that a nationwide blackout lasting 1 year could result in the deaths of 90% of the American population, from starvation, disease, and societal collapse. North Korea and Iran have both tested missiles capable of high-altitude detonation. Neither nation has signed treaties limiting EMP weapons. Both have made thinly veiled threats. In 2017, North Korean state media explicitly referenced the use of EMP attacks against American infrastructure, a threat dismissed by many as bluster. But the technology is not limited to rogue states. Any nation with nuclear capability and missile technology could execute such an attack. The barrier is not technical, it is political. And then there are the weapons no one admits to having. Satellite-based EMP platforms, orbital kinetic bombardment systems, devices that could strike without warning, without attribution, without a single soldier crossing a border. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 prohibits nuclear weapons in orbit, but it says nothing about non-nuclear EMP devices. The loophole is wide enough to fly a satellite through. In 2020, both Russia and China tested what they called Inspector satellites, spacecraft capable of maneuvering close to other nations' orbital assets. Officially, for observation. Unofficially, no one knows. The invisible bomb requires no invasion, no troops, no declaration of war. Just one device in the right place at the right altitude, and civilization returns to the 19th century. No bodies, no craters, no mushroom clouds to photograph, just a world that suddenly forgets how to function, and millions who will never understand why the lights went out. The invisible bomb exists. It has been tested. It has likely been deployed in limited form. And yet, it remains for most people entirely unknown. The perfect weapon hiding in plain sight. When the sky flashes white and every screen goes dark, there will be no warning, no siren, no enemy to fight, only silence and the long work of remembering how to survive without the machines. The Genetic Terminator. In the winter of 1945, as Soviet forces closed in on Berlin, a German military courier was intercepted near Poznan, Poland. Among his possessions was a leather notebook containing something unprecedented. The notebook contained detailed research notes for a biological weapon, unlike anything seen before, one designed not to kill indiscriminately, but to target specific genetic markers. The project was called Blutzeiger, blood indicator. Its goal, a viral agent that would activate only upon contact with certain genetic sequences, leaving others completely unharmed. The science was decades ahead of its time and built on a foundation of horrific human experimentation. Concentration camp prisoners were used to map what the Nazis called racial alleles. The weapon was designed as an aerosolized virus. Released into the air, it would spread silently, infecting everyone, but it would only kill those whose DNA matched the program target. Imagine a plague that spares your neighbors but takes your family, a disease that kills by bloodline, genocide made invisible, untraceable, and self-executing. The notebook indicated that prototype testing had begun in the final months of the war, on prisoners selected for specific ethnic backgrounds. The results were described as promising. When the war ended, the scientists behind Blutzeiger vanished. Some were captured by the Soviets. Others were absorbed into American programs. Most were never seen again. The Nuremberg trials documented countless Nazi atrocities, but Project Blutzeiger was never mentioned. No charges were filed, no testimony was recorded. The project officially did not exist. The leather notebook itself passed through Soviet intelligence, then disappeared in the 1950s. It resurfaced briefly in a private auction in 1987, purchased by an anonymous buyer for an undisclosed sum. In 1997, British and South African researchers published a controversial paper claiming that ethnic bioweapons were not only possible, but likely already under development by multiple nations. The paper was quickly retracted under pressure. The authors were accused of fear-mongering. Funding for similar research was quietly terminated across Western institutions. But the science has not stopped. CRISPR gene editing technology, developed in the 2010s, allows precise modification of DNA sequences. The same tool that cures diseases could theoretically create them for specific genetic profiles. In 2017, Russian President Vladimir Putin publicly warned that foreign entities were collecting genetic material from Russian citizens, implying concerns about targeted biological weapons. The Pentagon subsequently banned personnel from using consumer DNA testing services, citing security concerns. No further explanation was provided. Millions of people have voluntarily submitted their genetic profiles to ancestry services, data that now sits in private databases accessible to hackers, governments, and corporations alike. The building blocks of a genetic weapon are no longer theoretical. The targets are already mapped. The only remaining step is assembly, and the will to use it. If DNA is a code, then it can be read, and what can be read can be targeted. The Genetic Terminator is not a fantasy from the past. It is a probability of the future. The Nazis dreamed of a weapon that could erase entire bloodlines. 80 years later, we have built the tools to make that dream possible. The only question is who holds the trigger. When your own biology becomes the battlefield, there is nowhere to hide. The weapon is inside you, written in the code you inherited from your ancestors, and silence is the only warning you will ever receive. The time distortion field. In the final months of World War II, witnesses reported strange violet flashes over the mountains of Lower Silesia, events never fully explained. Some locals spoke of animals dying suddenly and plants withering in circular patterns, along with a metallic taste that lingered after each incident, stories that remain unverified. Beneath the Owl Mountains lay an underground complex known as Der Riese, the Giant, carved out under SS supervision using forced labor. Deep inside was a reinforced chamber said to have housed a device referred to in rumors as Die Glock, the bell. The device was described as a bell-shaped object, roughly 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide, made of a dense metallic alloy. Inside, two counter-rotating cylinders filled with a violet glowing substance called Zerum 525. When activated, the bell reportedly emitted a pale blue glow, rising to violet. Those too close experienced dizziness, memory loss, and a strange metallic taste, the same symptoms reported by villagers above. 5 of the 7 scientists assigned to the project died within the first few months, their bodies decomposing from the inside, blood turned to gel, tissue crystallizing. The project was overseen by SS General Hans Kammler, the same man who ran V-2 rocket production. His authority was absolute, his records were meticulous, and they all vanished in April 1945. Kammler himself disappeared on the last day of the war. 5 different accounts exist of his death, none verified. No body was ever found. After the war, Polish investigator Igor Witkowski gained access to classified Soviet interrogation transcripts. One document described Die Glocke in detail. Testimony from a captured SS officer named Jakob Sporenberg. That testimony allegedly suggested experiments related to gravity and time-like effects, presented as claims, not established science. Reports described unusual changes in plants and rapid deaths in animals, but these details remain part of contested narratives. If any of this had a real basis, it would have been extraordinary. But the line between rumor, exaggeration, and reality is hard to draw. Near the test site, a mysterious structure still stands, a concrete ring with thick columns, nicknamed the Henge. Its purpose has never been officially explained. Some researchers believe the Henge was a test rig, designed to suspend the bell during activation. The thick columns would have absorbed the massive electromagnetic forces generated by the device. In April 1945, as Soviet forces approached, the underground complex was evacuated. 62 scientists connected to the project were executed by the SS, their bodies found in a nearby mineshaft. The bell itself was loaded onto a Junkers transport plane. It flew west, toward territory controlled by American forces. Neither the plane nor its cargo was ever officially recovered. Some theories suggest the bell reached a secret U.S. facility. Others claim it was taken to Argentina or even Antarctica. The truth remains buried, perhaps literally. In 2000, British researcher Nick Cook published his investigation into Die Glock, citing multiple sources and physical evidence. His conclusion, the project was real, and its technology was deliberately suppressed. Critics categorize the bell as wonder weapon mythology, while supporters point to physical sites and missing documentation as circumstantial indicators. Neither side provides conclusive proof. Although physics allows unusual effects under extreme conditions, that general possibility does not validate specific historical claims about time distortion without verifiable evidence. If the device functioned as described, it would have represented an extraordinary breakthrough. However, the available public evidence is insufficient to support that conclusion. Claims of deliberate suppression are common in such narratives, but establishing suppression requires documentation that is not available in open sources. The chamber beneath the Owl Mountains is now sealed. The tunnels are flooded. The henge stands alone in the forest, visited only by curious tourists who do not understand what they are looking at. But somewhere, in a vault, a hangar, a mountain bunker, the bell may still exist, waiting, silent, its secrets intact. The plasma cannon. In 1993, at the Phillips Laboratory in New Mexico, U.S. Air Force scientists achieved something thought to be decades away. They weaponized plasma. The project was called Marauder, Magnetically Accelerated Ring, to achieve ultra-high directed energy and radiation. Its purpose to fire rings of plasma at speeds exceeding 3,000 kilometers per second. At those speeds, the plasma ring carried the energy equivalent of a small explosive, enough to punch through steel armor, disable electronics, and vaporize anything in its path. Unlike lasers, which lose coherence over distance, plasma toroids maintained their shape and energy. They could theoretically travel kilometers before dissipating. 2 peer-reviewed papers were published in 1993, documenting Marauder's success. The plasma rings achieved velocities of up to 10,000 kilometers per second in some tests, approaching 1% of the speed of light. And then, suddenly, silence. No further papers were published. No follow-up experiments announced. The entire project vanished from the public record as if it had never existed. Researchers who had worked on the project were transferred to classified programs. Their names disappeared from scientific journals. Requests for information were met with silence or denial. The official explanation? The project had achieved its research goals and was discontinued. No further development was necessary. In military research, successful projects do not simply end. They evolve, they scale, they weaponize. The silence around Marauder suggested not failure, but something far more significant. In 2006, footage emerged, allegedly leaked from a defense contractor, showing a plasma weapon test. The video depicted a compact device firing glowing rings at armored targets. The video was quickly removed from the internet. Those who had downloaded it found their copies corrupted. The original source was never identified. Meanwhile, defense industry patents filed between 1995 and 2010 reference compact plasma generators, toroidal acceleration systems, and directed energy delivery mechanisms, components of a weapon that officially does not exist. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, the largest defense contractors in the world, all hold patents related to plasma weaponization. Development clearly continued, just not in public. In 2017, the U.S. Navy filed a patent for a compact fusion reactor, a technology that would provide the immense power needed to fire plasma weapons repeatedly from a mobile platform. The pieces fit together. A plasma weapon that works, a power source to sustain it, 3 decades of classified development, and complete public denial. Imagine a weapon with no ammunition to resupply, no bullets to trace, no explosive residue to analyze, just superheated plasma, lightning in a bottle fired at will. Such a weapon would revolutionize combat. It would also be, by definition, impossible to verify, making arms control treaties meaningless and accountability impossible. In 2020, the U.S. Air Force released a promotional video showcasing next-generation weapons. For 3 seconds, a device resembling Marauder appeared. Then, the frame was cut. The video was later re-released with that segment removed. No explanation was given. The Air Force stated the edit was made for clarity. Clarity, the word governments use when they mean control. The plasma cannon exists, but you are not meant to know. Other nations have pursued the same technology. Russia's Shiva program and China's reported plasma research suggest a new arms race, one conducted entirely in secret. In 2019, a Chinese military journal published an article discussing plasma sheath technology for hypersonic vehicles, a dual use application of the same physics. The plasma cannon is not science fiction. It was demonstrated in 1993. The only question is how far it has evolved and who will use it first. The plasma cannon was proven, perfected, and hidden. Somewhere, in a testing range or a warship's hold, it waits, ready to rewrite the rules of war without anyone knowing the rules have changed. When the first plasma strike occurs in open combat, the world will wonder where it came from. The answer has been buried since 1993, 30 years of silence, and counting. The Gravity Disruptor. In 1956, a startling headline appeared in Aviation Week magazine, one of the most respected aerospace publications in the world. The headline read, "Electrogravity." The article revealed that major aerospace companies, Boeing, Convair, Bell Aircraft, and others, were actively researching anti-gravity propulsion, not as fantasy, but as engineering. At the center of this research was Thomas Townsend Brown, an American physicist who had been demonstrating the link between electricity and gravity since the 1920s. Brown's experiments showed that highly charged capacitors exhibited a thrust toward their positive pole, a phenomenon he called the Biefeld-Brown effect after his mentor. Skeptics attributed the effect to ion wind, charged air molecules pushing the device. But Brown's experiments in vacuum chambers showed the effect persisted even without air. In 1952, Brown submitted a proposal to the U.S. military called Project Winterhaven, a plan to develop disc-shaped aircraft using electrogravitic propulsion. The proposal was classified immediately. For the next few years, anti-gravity research flourished in the open. Aviation Week published follow-up articles. Engineers spoke at conferences. The future seemed tantalizingly close. Then, in 1957, everything stopped. All publications ceased. All conferences were canceled. Every aerospace company simultaneously declared that anti-gravity research had proven unfruitful and was being discontinued. Every company, at the same time, with the same explanation. In the world of competing corporations, such coordination does not happen by accident. It happens by order. Townsend Brown was offered a job with a classified project, one he could never speak about. He accepted. His public research ended. He died in 1985, having never revealed what he learned. But the research did not disappear. It went underground, into black budget programs with code names and compartmentalized security. Lockheed's Skunk Works, Boeing Phantom Works, the places where official physics ends and something else begins. In the 1980s, witnesses across Belgium, Arizona, and Illinois reported seeing massive triangular craft, silent, hovering, capable of instant acceleration. No known aircraft could match their performance. The Belgian wave of 1989-1990 produced over 13,000 witness reports. The Belgian Air Force scrambled F-16 fighters to intercept, but the craft outmaneuvered them effortlessly, accelerating at speeds that would kill any human pilot. These were not alien spacecraft. The witnesses described smooth manufactured surfaces, running lights, deliberate flight patterns over military installations, and nuclear facilities. If anti-gravity propulsion was abandoned in 1957, what explains these craft? Silent, hovering, accelerating without inertia, performing maneuvers impossible for any conventional aircraft. In 2004, Ben Rich, the former director of Lockheed's Skunk Works, reportedly told a colleague before his death, "We already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are so locked up that it would take an act of God to ever get them out." Rich's words suggest that the 1957 blackout was not a failure. It was a success. The technology worked. and it was immediately classified beyond all normal levels of secrecy. In 2017, the U.S. Navy filed patents for an inertial mass reduction device, a technology that would allow craft to move by manipulating the fabric of spacetime itself. The patent was filed by Salvatore Pais, a Navy aerospace engineer. When questioned about its feasibility, the Navy stated that China was already developing similar technology, and the U.S. could not afford to fall behind. If anti-gravity is impossible, why does the U.S. Navy hold patents for it? If it does not exist, why warn about Chinese competition? The contradiction reveals more than any confirmation ever could. Gravity is the weakest of the fundamental forces, yet it shapes galaxies. If we can manipulate it, we unlock not just new propulsion, but new physics, new possibilities for energy, travel, and existence itself. The Gravity Disruptor is not coming. According to multiple insiders, patent records, and decades of sightings, it has already arrived. We just haven't been told. Why the secrecy? Because anti-gravity does not just revolutionize travel, it revolutionizes power. Whoever controls gravity controls the future, and some futures are too valuable to share. The Gravity Disruptor was discovered, developed, and hidden. For 70 years, we have been told it is impossible, while black triangles cross our skies in silence. When gravity becomes optional, the ground loses its meaning, and perhaps that is what they fear most. Not the technology itself, but a world where the old boundaries no longer apply. Look up at the night sky. What you cannot see may already be watching, hovering, waiting, gravity disrupted, and with it, everything we think we know. The neural shutdown device, in February 1991, during Operation Desert Storm, something unusual happened in the Iraqi desert. Entire battalions of Iraqi soldiers, battle-hardened veterans, surrendered without firing a single shot. Witnesses described soldiers emerging from bunkers with glazed eyes, trembling hands, and an inability to speak coherently. Many wept uncontrollably. Others simply stood motionless, waiting to be captured. The official explanation was low morale and overwhelming firepower. But the scale was unprecedented. Nearly 90,000 soldiers surrendered in the first 100 hours. Many had not been bombed. Many had not been attacked at all. Captured soldiers later described hearing voices in their heads, commands to surrender, feelings of overwhelming despair, an absolute certainty that resistance was futile. In 1992, 1 year after the war, the U.S. Patent Office granted patent 5/139,703 to Oliver Lowry. The invention, silent sound spread spectrum, a system to transmit audio directly into the human brain without audible sound. The technology works by modulating voice commands onto frequencies the conscious mind cannot perceive, but the subconscious processes as real, commands that feel like your own thoughts. ITV News reported in 1991 that U.S. PSYOPs teams had deployed a classified system during Desert Storm, one that broadcasted surrender commands on Iraqi military radio frequencies using silent sound technology. The story aired once. It was never repeated. The Pentagon denied the report. The journalists who covered it moved to other assignments. The technology officially did not exist. But the research continued. A 1993 Air Force study titled Bioeffects of Selected Non-Lethal Weapons explored direct neural influence through electromagnetic and acoustic means, and how it could be weaponized. The report discussed the ability to induce specific emotional states, fear, confusion, compliance, through precisely tuned electromagnetic pulses. It was not theoretical. It was engineering. In 2006, the U.S. Marine Corps unveiled the Active Denial System, a truck-mounted microwave device that causes intense burning sensations, forcing targets to flee. It was called non-lethal, It was deployed to Iraq, but allegedly never used. But the active denial system affects only the skin. The classified systems, the ones that affect the mind, remain hidden. What happened in 1991 suggests they have been operational for over 3 decades. Faux IA requests for documents related to silent sound and neural weapons have been systematically denied. Researchers who persisted found their requests returned with pages entirely redacted, sometimes nothing but black ink. In 2012, the Russian defense minister publicly announced their development of psychotronic weapons, systems that attack the central nervous system and induce specific psychological states. The Russian announcement was barely covered by Western media. Within days, it vanished from the news cycle. No follow-up questions, no official responses, just silence. The familiar silence that surrounds these technologies. China has been equally active. Reports from 2019 describe electromagnetic devices capable of disrupting neural function at distances, tested on Uyghur populations, according to leaked documents. The neural shutdown device is not a single weapon. It is a category. Microwave transmitters, infrasound emitters, electromagnetic pulsars, subliminal audio systems, all targeting the same objective: control of the human mind. The implications are staggering. A weapon that can make you surrender without fighting, feel terror without threat, obey without questioning, think thoughts that are not your own. In a world of such weapons, democracy becomes theater, consent becomes programmable, and the boundary between your mind and their control dissolves entirely. The Havana Syndrome attacks continue to this day. U.S. intelligence officers report incidents in Vienna, Berlin, Geneva, even on American soil. The weapon is mobile. The attackers remain unidentified. In 2021, Congress passed the Havana Act, providing compensation to affected personnel. The law acknowledges the attacks are real, but it still does not name the weapon or the attacker. What does it mean when your own government admits you have been attacked by a weapon, but refuses to tell you what it is? When compensation is offered, but explanation is withheld? The neural shutdown device represents the ultimate violation, the invasion of the last private space, your own thoughts. When that boundary is breached, nothing remains truly yours. The technology exists. It has been patented, tested, and, according to multiple accounts, deployed. The only question is whether you will recognize it when it is used on you. The neural shutdown device was not erased from history. It was erased from awareness while remaining fully operational. The weapon hides not in vaults but in plain sight, and its targets are everyone. When your thoughts can be silenced, rewritten, or shut down entirely, who are you? The answer may no longer be yours to give.